you do teach in an upper grade, don't necessarily assume this isn't applicable to you, because the vowels, and this is kind of like, imagine you're surgeons, and I'm going to talk about the ears, eyes, nose, and throat, and you're thinking, I'm a cardiologist. I don't need to hear about eyes, ears, nose, and throat. Eyes, ears, nose, and throat are the best windows into everything that's going on with your patient. No matter how complex the problem is, it all starts with eyes, ears, nose, and throat. If your leg is hanging by a thread, the doctor still says, hop up on the table, let me take a look in your eyes. You wonder why, because your leg's falling off. But the best way to know what kind of a wound you have is to see if you're going into shock. And then he can tell if it's a flesh wound or if it's deeper, because your pupils will dilate. So the vowels are the eyes, ears, nose, and throat. They're the first thing you want to check, because when you have to think out of the box with higher level text, often you have to eliminate your main suspects first. Vowels are also pretty tricky because ELL learners, or just areas, regions of the country, we can all do this in some different ways that can throw off some auditory skills with learners. So I want to start by just telling you a secret that you need to know, and that is that the vowels are superheroes. They have a power that no other letter in the alphabet has. They can say their name. Now that does not sound impressive to humans. We would rather breathe underwater or fly in the sky. But if you're a letter who walks around every day of your life going k-k-k-k-k or b-b-b-b-b, then you would be so thrilled to have another sound to make, let alone it be your own name. So they are the envy of every other letter. And because everybody looks up to them and they're the kind of the envied group, they have to have disguises, just like all superheroes have disguises, so that nobody can kind of keep coming up and harassing them. So they have these little alter egos where they'll act kind of short and lazy. So I'm going to tell you just 2 of these so you know, and then you can see the rest of these on your PowerPoint if you actually need them. But you, for example, she likes to sit in the back of the class and she just pretends that she's not listening. So that no, she really is listening, but she pretends not to be listening, so that when the teacher calls on her, she can go, and that's her short and lazy sound. Now, she's actually paying very good attention, but every time she makes that short and lazy sound, nobody suspects she could actually be a superhero. Now, if you're not in an early grade, just so you know, that is actually use short sound. So it's a quick, easy way to get there without looking at lip position, tongue position. E, sticks an old lady bun on her head, some big glasses. She likes to walk around and interrupt everybody's conversation and go, What'd you say? And of course, that's her short and lazy disguise, because who would suspect she's superhero E if she can't even keep up with what's going on? Now, just so you know, that's something to just take us up to this level where I want to hit. For those of you that need the rest of those little tricks, you're going to have them all. You can download them all and see little video clips and then just jump right in, take it, and do it with your class. But the reason I told you those is because this is Sneaky Y. And he basically, the problem is he found out about these superheroes in the alphabet, and he was just fit to be tied, because he's always wanted to be a superhero, but he doesn't have any powers. And when he found out there were letters that did have these powers, he just got really mad. And then he got sneaky. And what he did is he decided to sneak into the closets of superhero E and superhero I, and he took one of each of their capes, which is where their powers lie. So now, when he's at the end of a word, no, he's no dummy. He won't do this when he's the line leader, because he knows everybody can see him. But when he's the end, when he is the caboose, he will always be sneaky, and he'll always be wearing either his E or his I cape, so that he can use their sounds in words like mom E, dad E, candy, I, July. Anytime you see him at the end of a word, he is being sneaky. He is always going to be wearing his E or his I cape. Now, if he's at the beginning of a word, he's going to do what any good line leader would, which is what he's supposed to. Yeah, yeah. Yellow, yes, you, yak. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, if you're thinking, well, no, because what about the words they or today or play? Those aren't words where Y says E or I. You're right, but that's not sneaky Y. That's E-Y, A-Y. And if you're under 30, this will be less meaningful personally for you. But if you remember who Fonzie is, EY, AY are just too cool. So when they get together, just that's all they care about is looking cool. And they always stick up their thumbs and go, eh. And that's the sound that they make. But that's not sneaky Y, that's EY, AY. He can carry this thinking framework into text he has never seen. And that's really what we're trying to do. The brain is like a bookie in Las Vegas. We want best betting odds for Las Vegas. So when kids come to text they have never seen, we want them to be able to look at a word and bring to that word the best betting odds for Las Vegas when it comes to how am I going to attack that word. And if he knows that you're going to be sneaky back here and up here you're not going to be, that gives him the best foot up to know what sounds to try, even in a word he's never laid eyes on before. Same thing when he's writing, because writing is a window into the mind of a reader. And this is where you're going to see some of this come out, and then I'm going to extend it and show you some tricks that are super high. We're going to look at some kid writing to see what's happening when they're pulling things together from whole cloth. But I'm going to take it from the very bottom ground zero and shift your paradigm completely about what we think kids can do and when they can do it. Now, I call this parallel universe writing because there's some weird stuff where, like, there'll still be an elephant in this parallel universe, but it'll be pink. And it'll have maybe 2 trunks instead of 1. So I know that sounds like a strange analogy, but the reason I say that is you'll be able to see some telltale signs that this is kindergarten writing, even though it's going to look ridiculous for kindergarten writing. Now, this is kindergarten. This is what I'm going to call an average sample, and the reason I'm going to call it average is there's our new paradigm shift. Low is over here, the far left, average is in the middle, high is on the end. And this actually was a pull-out class with 5 pre-identified kids, some of which make up this low group. Now, I've taught all the grades, but I've taught kinder long enough to know that is not at all a typical high, medium, and low. As a matter of fact, that low is high in kinder. That high is ridiculous in kinder. That could even be average for 4th if you really think about it. So I know this looks totally wrong, and I actually have an entire suitcase of hundreds of writing samples from everybody in the class from 3 different classes, because I like to actually immerse you guys in writing so you can see this actual bell curve in its form of 4 or 5 on this end, this 10 or 11 in the middle, and then the 5 or 6 on this side, and see that across each group, because I like it to be in your hands. But for right now, what I'll say is this is just the group of swimmers swimming in the pool where the current's pushing behind them. So everybody goes up. When the current's pushing behind you, your weak swimmers propel forward, even if they're just dead man floating. Your strong swimmers look bionic, and everybody in between just thrives as well. So you lift everybody up when you're going in that same direction, which is teaching with the brain in mind. So let's look at quickly your average. This is average sample, and you'll see telltale signs that something's up, something's weird. I'm a dolphin, I live in the deep blue sea. There are octopus, there are sharks, but I could kill them with my nose. I can camouflage, so when sharks swim by me, they cannot see me. There are coral too, I could play all day, there's no place like home. Notice the way the little guy spelled the word they, T-H-A-Y. Now, most kids, oh, and by the way, the word see, S-Y. Now, we know why he did that based on what I had just taught you about the sneaky Y. But most kids that are going to take a leap to write the word camouflage know how to spell the word see in kindergarten. Because in kindergarten, usually your only kids who are writing anything are kids who've been read to at home. That's how else they don't have any skills yet, so how else would they put things together from whole cloth? Your writers in kinder are kids who've had parents read to them. They remember some of the words, and then they come to school and they can put some of those words down. Those are your writers. The rest of the kids just copy name tags and color words and make a B 14 times, and it doesn't make any sense at all, but they're engaged in writing, or writing, however you call it. But it's interesting because typically if a kindergartner is going to sit there and try to put together the word camouflage, they're already going to know how to spell the word see. And to me, it's ironic to see these errors in words that are simple and yet such power over words that are harder, such courage to jump into these words and say what he really wants to say. So I know he spelled they, T-H-A-Y, because he knew it was E-Y or A-Y, but at his age, without text experience, it was a crapshoot. He didn't know which one was which, so he just picked one. And he picked the wrong one. With more experience, that will fine-tune which one's correct. But the good part is, he picked one that makes sense, which means when he reads it, he can reread what he writes and move on with his story. And that's what keeps a writer writing. Nothing stops a writer writing faster than having no idea what they just wrote down. And writing makes you a better reader. Reading makes you a better writer. It's all really the same thing. If you're a Morse code operator, sending the code makes you a much better receiver. Receiving messages makes you a much stronger sender. It's the same thing backwards. So we want to keep kids engaged in writing. We want kids to keep reading that book that they really like without having to stop at every third word because they don't know that pattern yet and that sound yet. The more we can give them a motivation to engage in the books they're actually interested in reading or the stories they actually want to tell, the better and the stronger a reader-writer they are. So I love the things he did. I know why he put S-Y too. He was thinking E-R-I at the end of the word. It's got to be sneaky Y. So he stuck a Y there. But again, he can reread what he wrote, he can move on with his story, and that's going to keep him writing. So that's the key. And you can tell he's building from whole cloth. He's literally building this from what he owns as a tool set. And that's a cool thing. Now, this is a low-level guy. This was one of the guys who had a sticker on his cume. And this group of kids, and I'm going to kind of move myself through here. This was a group of kids who had pre-identified child find. They were coming from either didn't talk until they were 4 or alcohol fetal syndrome. something that caused them to be identified and already starting to get services before kinder. Not speech artic, half your class can't talk right in kinder, but heavy duty stuff. So this was one of those guys. He wrote, I a dolphin, other dolphins make me dead fish. I don't like it, it tastes horrible. I swim round the deep blue sea. Now I love that he took a leap to write the word horrible, but he didn't know how to spell the word blue. He took a great guess with blue. He spelled it B-L-O-O, blue. Ooh. But what's interesting is his head was 3 inches from the blue crayon on the wall. There's a big blue crayon on the wall. All he had to do is glance to the right, and it's right there for him to copy. You know why he didn't do it? And this is the cool thing about what writing lets you do, is that you can see it like an X-ray into their head as a reader when you look at their writing. He didn't copy that word blue because he was on a roll. He was telling his story. He didn't need that stupid sight word. Kids like this typically live and die by your sight words. Heck, they come up with their whole story based on, okay, what can I write about the farm using the words boy, girl, like, it, and she? I mean, your sight words often are their only ammunition to bring to the table because they can't build from whole cloth because they don't have the skills they need to put things together and take them apart. So I loved that he was so into what he was doing that he picked what is a perfectly good guess, that O-O. If I were right there with him, I would have said, I love the way you got that ooh sound. That's awesome. Now, the grown-up one that we use for that word is U-E. See, it's up here. So I wouldn't have said it was wrong. I would have just said, you know, great job for knowing that. The grown-up one for that word that we use is this one. But in his own time, when I'm not there, I love that he put this together. I also love that he wrote the word horrible because bad would have been a lot faster. But he didn't want to say bad by darn it. He wanted to say it was horrible. And that's going to keep him writing because he can say what he wants. I loved that. Now, and he picked roud, by the way, R-O-U-D. Keep noting that because when we go to the next low guy, he wrote, I had a fun swim. I jump high, H-I-Y. He apparently couldn't decide. He knew sight memory. He'd seen high, H-I, but he knew sneaky wise as ear-I, so he thought, to be safe, I'm going to put both. That way I know I got it right. So he spelled high, H-I-Y. And it's fun, too. I had a great time swimming, and now I'm tired. Now, he spelled now, N-O-U. Because he didn't know which one was which. He just crapshoot picked the OU instead of the OW, which is fine. He can go back, reread it, and keep writing if he wants. It also tells me as a reader, by the way, how many words could he crack apart. And I especially like the way he spelled great, G-R-A-T-E, because it's wrong and yet so right. And by so right, I mean, think how many words he could read. If he gets that that's what makes that A say A, then he could read about 400 other words. The interesting part, though, is if he spelled the word, and actually I meant to make this point on the kid that wrote they, T-H-A-Y. If he spelled the word they correctly, I wouldn't know if he could actually crack apart about 1,000 other words that had the E-Y-A-Y sound, or if he just knew the word they. The fact that he spelled that so wrong and yet so right means he owns the tool. He knows E-Y-A-Y say A. That's about 100 words that or 2,000 words that he's got the key to. And that's so much more interesting to me than if he spelled it correctly. Now, I'm not saying I don't want him to spell it correctly. I'm saying your diagnostic scope is more limited if it's a sight word because you don't know whether they just plugged in the sight word or they actually own the tools that went into building it. Stanford actually just did a study that really talked about this whole thing, and it's on my Facebook page, and I think I mentioned it in a blog as well, and I'm going to do another post about it. But it talked about, you know, sight words don't get you anywhere near the bang for the buck as actual reading and writing, and don't memorize what you can just read. Now, the trick is, if you can't read everything because you don't own the whole code till 2nd or 3rd grade, then sight words are your lifeline. But if they could have access to everything earlier on, the memorization can kind of just dissipate because they can actually work through things by building it, reading it, writing it. Now, here's the interesting part with great. This is not a kid who can think out of the box yet about, he's not going to put a letter for a sound he doesn't hear. So that E did not come because he was thinking, I need an E that will be silent to impact the alternative sound of the vowel in close proximity to make it go from short to long. That's not how he thinks. He put an E there for one reason. That's Mommy E. And Mommy E will stand 1 letter away from another vowel, and if she's 1 letter away, she will tell that vowel, you say your name. And he will. Because she's close enough if she needs to get a hold of him, reach over that one head and tell him to do it. Now, if Mommy's not there, that vowel gets to be short and lazy, and that word would have been gr-at. He wanted that word to be gr-ate, so he had to stick a Mommy E right there, close enough to get a hold of that A if need be. Now, that's like thinking about, like if you're playing soldiers or Barbies, you know, the sergeant soldier tells the private soldier what to do, and the private's not going to do it till he's told. Mommy Barbie tells the baby Barbie what to do. That's the kind of thinking that happens back here. And yet he can apply that kind of thinking to navigate his decision-making with unfamiliar text. It's a perfect storm because we're taking what already drives their decision-making on a daily basis, and we're using it to give them a leg up on text they've never even seen before, which is awesome. Now, think about a word like butter. You've got B-U-T-T-E-R. Mommy E can yell or scream all day long. Bottom is her arms are too short to get a hold of the U because she can't reach over those two T's head to make him do what he should, and that's why that U gets to be short and lazy and go, If Mommy were one letter away, though, she could make darn sure she got a hold of that U and the word would be butter and not butter. Now, what if it's not an E? And I'm going to kind of end with this little wrap-up, but, you know, we have a lot of tricks. You might hear about sparkly E or magic E. Teaching with the brain in mind, you've got good, better, best. It is definitely good to have a hook. Any hook is better than no hook. Best hook is taking advantage of an area in the brain that already functions beautifully and fluidly and applying that to the area that's not quite in the program yet. So we want to keep things real with things kids already use to decide things in their own life. And that means, you know, Mommy, they get what Mommy's going to do to them if she gets a hold of them, and they get what they can do if she's a little too far away to reach. Mommy's got to get out of the house sometimes. So when she has to get out of the house, what she'll do is she'll just put a babysitter in charge, and that babysitter will do just what Mom would if she were there. It will tell that other vowel, you say your name. So boys and girls, if you see any vowel that's one letter away from another vowel, that's the babysitter. And it's going to do exactly what Mom would if she were there. It's going to tell that vowel, you say your name, and it will. Now that's really critical because the silent E and magic E and all that, that's great if the words are one syllable long with an E at the end. But what about all the rest of the text? What about the vowel? You know, what this really is the anti-brain. Vowel, consonant, vowel, vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel. If you have a vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel, you divide between the two consonants, in which case you have a closed syllable. That is what would then dictate the vowel to be short. However, if you have a vowel, consonant, vowel pattern, you divide after the vowel, in which case you have what we call a long syllable, and in that case the vowel would be long. Or open syllable, which would be long. So that is backdoor. Or front door. That's the kind of thinking and talking that will just get kids who aren't already with you to be totally lost. Everybody gets what you do when Mom's right there. Everybody gets what happens when Mom's not around. Babysitter's there, still have to do it anyway. So these are the kind of frameworks that are so easy to put in place if you understand the system of the brain and you understand how you can rob the bank and get around those alarm systems. And it really will open up an entirely different world for readers, because when you know what's inside the box, it is incredibly easy and actually far more fun to think outside of it. And outside of the box is where they need to be when they're applying that critical thought. Now, I know it's 3:30. I'm going to take 1 minute to tell you one thing that you will immediately find out when you get to your classroom if you start playing with this or tell any other teacher about it. Even teachers might say, well, what about the word have? Okay, have doesn't work. Secret doesn't work. Word should be have. What about the word river? Right? You said, Mommy, E one letter away, that should be river. So see, then what? So then we're back in the problem where it doesn't do what it's supposed to. Here's what you say to keep it back here. When a learner comes up and tells you it doesn't work, have should be have, and river should be river. So it doesn't work. All you do is say, you're right, honey. Where should you be, though, right now? And he'll say, my seat. Okay, right, but you're not at your seat. You're in the next most likely place I'd expect to find you, which, of course, is right here at my desk. Do you know where the third most likely place is I would go to look for you if you weren't at your seat or at my desk? I bet you guys know. The bathroom, right? Because that's the third most likely place that you like to go. Now, you would never think to just go hop up on the desk of the principal and climb up in his cabinets, right? That would be crazy. You wouldn't do that. Letters are just like you, especially the vowels. They don't just lose their minds and do whatever they want. A's never going to go buh. L's never going to say ss. All they do, and it's usually the vowels that do it, is something they're perfectly able to do anyway. It just might be the next most likely thing, next most likely sound. So what else could A say in the word have? Well, it could say A or A, but it's not supposed to because Mommy E's there. I know, honey, but where are you supposed to be right now? In my seat. Right, so let's just try that other sound you said it could make. Let's see. Surprise, did it work? Yeah, we got the word. What about the word river? What else could I say? Well, it could say it, but it's not supposed to because Mommy E's. I know, honey, but again, where are you supposed to be right now? So they get the idea that we don't always behave and letters don't either, but we don't just lose our minds and do random stuff. We do the next most likely thing. And that's why the cool thing is if you know what's in the box, and I did make secrets for anything that happens 5 times or more in text, and then default so that it's not phonicsy, because phonics doesn't work the way the brain works. It's more behaviorally. Why is Johnny acting this way? And if he is, it's probably because of this, because he spent the night with Dad, and Dad lives 40 miles away, so he's tired because they didn't get in until 2 in the morning, and that's why he's mean to me today. It's using the thinking that they already use to drive and navigate their decision-making with unfamiliar text. And I do have to be quiet now, but I will say that I did with that 5th grade group, when I was talking to them, I thought their problem in their text was that they didn't have a trigger for how to know if a vowel would be long or short. So I asked them, do you have a trick when you see these big long words? Because you've got multiple vowels in these words. Do you have a trick to help you know what sound to make for those vowels? Because think about it, if you don't, vowels can make 2 sounds, you got a 3-syllable word, you've got like a crapshoot of sounds to make. And they said, yeah, we have a trick. We try everything until we get the right one. We do the long sound. If it doesn't work, then we do the short sound. And they do that for every single vowel. So I thought they just needed the trick, the babysitter vowel trick. Turns out once I told them the trick and they knew whether it was going to be long or short, then they didn't know their vowel sounds. Then one of the little guys looked at me and says, I don't know what short O says. So we had to back up even further. But giving him those cues meant there was no learning curve because the cue came first. So when he tried to read it, he went like this first and then the sound came out, which means the cue brought the sound. He wasn't thinking lip position, tongue position, shape, as in these words. He was using a dramatic action, which was back here, that immediately popped that sound right out of his mouth. So there was no time to have to practice the skill. We could just start using those skills to read and to write, and we cut out all the practice time that usually slows us down and kills those K2 teachers.